everybody, and welcome to a new edition of the XPRIMM Time for Business show. Today our guest is Mrs. Petra HIELKEMA, Chairperson of EIOPA, the European Insurance and Occupational Pensions Authority. Hello Petra, and welcome to Bucharest.
Yes, thank you very much, and first time and a pleasure to be here.
Well, hopefully not the last time.
No, I'm sure it's not.
We would like to see you more often. You are here today on the occasion of the UNSAR, our Insurance Association 30th anniversary. And we have talked a lot about the Romanian market and the Romanian market within the European one and its perspectives. And I would like to ask you first, from your regulatory standpoint, what are the priorities for the insurance industry in Europe nowadays?
So the priorities, I think, are of course, first of all, being robust. But the good news is that Solvency II has shown that it is very supportive of making sure insurers can withstand crises. So we've gone through the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, inflation, interest rates rising, and still our industry is robust. So we need to keep it that way, that is a priority, but at the same time it is also giving a basis to grow further. And there are multiple opportunities. With risks increasing in Europe, in our market, in our economy, there really is a need to help consumers, to help businesses to deal with those risks, because more and more is needed. What am I thinking about? First of all, protection gaps in insurance. I'm thinking about the cyber risk that businesses run, but also individuals. They're not all insured at the moment. I'm thinking about the impact of climate change on houses, on properties, on businesses, hailstorms, droughts, forest fires, earthquakes. They are happening and they're more frequent, they have more damages. It's not yet covered by insurance. 75% is not. That is an opportunity. And finally, we all know that we live in an aging continent, and that means that we will have more and more people at old age, but they are at risk of living in poverty. 20% are. So we have a pension gap. Now, that is all very depressive news, of course, but at the same time, for insurers, there is an opportunity, because insurance is in the business of dealing with society's risks. So the priorities of this industry has to be stay robust and then help society to close the protection gap for cyber, close the protection gap for pensions, and close the protection gap for Nat Cat. And then right behind that, don't forget about health. So those are the priorities. Now, how do you do that? By selling clear, transparent products that offer value for money. So the price is reflecting the cost, the services, and the returns, but nothing else. That is important to keep the trust and to maintain the business. So with that, making use of the data we have, making use of all the AI and other technology can help us analyze the data, building on what our industry has been doing for decades, using data to assess the risk, to manage the risk. This is what we need to do, and that is the priority.
Speaking about this, you just said that it's important to sell to people simple products, very clear and easy to understand and to get in the end, in a simpler process. But years before, in aiming to improve customers' protection, the regulations became more and more demanding on presenting a lot of data, a lot of information. So sometimes the process is getting more complicated, not easier. Do you think that can make some changes in this respect, or is it something to do?
So to the question, have we become too complicated, and how can we address the need to have clear, transparent products? I have, I think, 3 points I want to make. First one is, I truly believe that the majority of citizens in EU are fine and can be very much helped by a simple, clear, low-cost product. prefer be sold digital, because I do think the next generations would like a digital product. I also believe you can reach more people having a digital product, but you still will offer also, if consumers like that, of course, a paper-based product. But why not have the starting point to be digital, and through that channel you sell something that is simple, transparent, and delivers value for money. It starts from that. It starts from the moment you make the product, through the distribution to the point of sale, to the care afterwards. That has to be good. It starts from that. Now, is that possible today? I think to a large extent, yes, because you make the product and you can keep it simple. But I agree that if you want to sell the product, there's a lot of rules and a lot of information that you need to share and explain to customers. That might be a little bit too much. And it comes from the time where we thought that if we are very transparent to consumers, we create a lot of consumer protection. I think by now we have learned that sometimes that is a bit too much for the consumer, and we need to improve. A way to improve is, for example, the idea of the dashboard that is now in the retail investment strategy, where a consumer in one glance can see what it is they are buying. What are the costs? Is there a guarantee? Do I pay up front or do I pay afterwards? Is biometric risk included? Final point, you just heard me say it, biometric risk. That's actually a very difficult word, and maybe we as an insurance community understand what that means, but probably none of the consumers does. So using simple language is very important. We need to find different words for longevity, for mutualization, and also for biometric risk, to translate that in language that consumers understand, and then also understand why it would help them. Now, the other question you ask is alluding to the differences between member states. Now, I'm the European supervisor. My aim is convergence and harmonization. And so this is what we strive for, and I think there are a lot of opportunities for that. At the same time, there are also some limitations, especially when we are dealing with minimum harmonization. So when it comes to Solvency II, there's a lot of opportunity to do the same, and if practices are not the same, we should work on convergence. But if you look at IDD or PRIPS or IOP2, these are all legislation that are minimum harmonization, and the reality of minimum harmonization is that there is room for countries, for member states to implement it slightly different. That is the reality of where we are. And if we want to change that, I think we need to have a discussion at the EU level on how we can further harmonize those legislations that are currently minimum, and maybe also bring those to maximum. I do think that would benefit the single market.
Probably in terms of level market playing, for instance, for sure would be like that. I would like to go back a little bit to communicating and the words thing that you mentioned. Insurers now are facing another challenge that is not very often mentioned, but they are facing a public that consists of the old customers habituated with a certain way of interacting, and the young generations who are completely different, have different needs, different expectations, would like everything to, I don't know, buy insurance like booking on booking.com or something like that. It's a very different landscape in the end. How do you think it's the industry addressing these differences, or how should they gradually adapt to this new language that is required without losing the old generations?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, the true question is, when it comes to the actual product, the actual protection that you offer, is there really a big difference in the needs? I think in the end, whether or not you are older or younger, if you have an insurance for travel, or if you have insurance for property, what you need is that if you have a damage during your travel or if you have a damage to your property, that the insurance helps you to recover the losses. So I think in the end that it's the same need. I think a lot is different in how you sell it. How do you create the awareness? What is the distribution channel? So we did a survey as EIOPA last year, and we asked consumers, what is your preference? Now, interestingly enough, only 19% of the consumers in Europe currently say, I prefer a digital sales channel. That means that still 81% of Europeans prefer to buy products through an individual or at least through a conversation on the phone. So recognizing that, it's not going that fast yet. So having a channel open for personal advice, I think, is still very important. But meanwhile, it is worth the effort of thinking about how to distribute to young people. If I talk to young people and if they have a question, they Google it, they go to TikTok. So where we are talking a lot about education, financial literacy, we often think about channels, websites that maybe don't reach this generation. Maybe we need to reach this generation through TikTok or through explanation videos that we post on YouTube explaining what it is. If we identify that actually going through all the questions before you can get the product, you can even do a YouTube movie with a manual, how do I actually enter into an insurance contract? That is very much the way, at least that many of the young people today intuitively ask Google, get help, and then do gardening, do household, fix things in the house. Why not get an insurance? So I do think that we need to think very much about the distribution channel. I doubt that there is such a big difference in what in the end the product has to be and what the product has to do for the individuals.
Yeah, probably the main difference is how you get to the product and how fast you can get it.
Yeah, or if you have questions, so if you are with a person and you have a question, you can ask the question to the person and they will explain. If you are online and you have a question, then I think we often think, okay, what do we do? Can I call someone? But this new generation doesn't first think, can I call someone? They think, is there a question mark button? Is there a YouTube movie? But they think in digital solutions to get explanations, which could be a very efficient way actually to use to reach out to this new generation. What I also think is very important when it comes to contact or not is actually the moment that there is damage and they need help. I think here much more personal contact is important, and this is really where the value of insurance is. So if you think, for example, last summer in Slovenia, in Norway, in Italy, there was a lot of bad weather that hit tourists. So tourists were stranded. They got help, but they didn't just get a lump sum in their bank account. What they got was they got someone who answered the phone, who listened to their story, who had empathy for that story, who then got them a hotel, helped them to find their belongings, help them to move home and then recover from the damage. And people now tell very positive stories about how much they were helped. They don't talk about how much money they got. They talk about the empathy and the help they got. And I don't think here there is a difference between young or older people. I think this is what you need, and this is where you really show the value of insurance and build the trust.
Yeah, in fact, it's what we often name very cold value added.
Yeah.
But it's about people. Insurance is very much about people, both in business and in customer relationship.
And if I can, and where I see where it goes wrong, also with the trust, is if the what is insured actually wasn't so clear, and so in the face of where you have a damage and you ask for a payout, the insurer says, oh, but that is not what we pay for, and then consumers don't understand anymore. And an example is that in the Netherlands, when there was a flooding 3 years ago and people had a property insurance that covered flooding, a debate started to happen where insurers said, yeah, we cover for water that comes from the ground and we cover for water that comes from the rain, but we don't cover from water that comes from the big rivers. So it depends on what water currently is making your property wet. And consumers just didn't understand that. Now, I, as a supervisor, I understand how that works. I understand that an insurer needs to assess the risk, and an insurer will say, okay, I can estimate the losses of rain, I can estimate the losses of groundwater, even of small rivers. I cannot do that for the large river, so I exclude that. But that is clear to me because I'm part of the insurance industry. That wasn't clear to consumers, even though from a risk management perspective, it was logic. And so even, that's what I want to say, even if it's logic for you as an insurer that you want to exclude something, it might be completely unclear, but also completely unlogic for the person who buys the insurance. And this is why it's so important to have clear language that set clear expectations and that in the end those expectations are met.
Yeah, right. Well, to end this pleasant conversation, Petra, I would like to ask you if you have some dedicated message for the Romanian insurers you met today.
Yeah, so first of all, happy birthday, 30 years, that's a very nice number. I've always learned that at 30 years you are young enough to be creative and innovative and still conquer the world, but you're old enough to know what you should be doing, but also what you should not be doing. So I think that's a perfect age now to move forward at a time that a lot can be done through insurance, and I have all the hopes that that will work in your market. It's been a rough ride, but there's a lot of opportunities, and through good dialogue, which takes place in the association and which takes place with the association, I'm sure you will strike the right balance and seize the opportunities that are there, with at the heart of all of that, a good protection and fair value for consumers.
Well, in the name of our colleagues in the insurance industry, thank you very much, Petra, for being here. Hopefully we will meet you again in Bucharest or in other parts of of this big mother country that it becomes Europe. Thank you also, all of you, for watching us, and we are waiting for you to the next edition.